I never imagined that my wedding day would become the most difficult moment of my life. I was only 16, and while everyone celebrated, I carried a secret that was tearing me apart inside. An unexpected pregnancy had changed my life forever, and no one knew what I was going through. I felt fear, confusion, and sadness. I didn't know how to face my family or how to tell my future husband. My tears mixed with my makeup, trying to hide my suffering from everyone. Every forced smile concealed the pain of a girl who had suddenly had to grow up. I felt like the world was crumbling around me, and every joyful glance from the guests was a reminder of what I couldn't share. As the day went on, my heart filled with doubts. How could I face motherhood at such a young age? How would I survive the criticism and judgment? Every kind word from my relatives seemed distant. No one could understand what I was truly feeling. My strength came from the need to protect my baby. Despite the fear, sadness, and feeling of loneliness, I began to plan a different future. With each tear that fell, I understood that I had to be brave, that my suffering wouldn't define my life, and that I could find a way to move forward. Amidst that storm, I learned lessons that no one had taught me: resilience, patience, and the ability to fight for what we love. Every step, every decision, was an act of love for my child and for myself. And although no one could see my inner struggle, I knew I was forging my path to emotional freedom. Over the years, I have come to understand that suffering can become strength, that every challenge, every obstacle is an opportunity to grow. My teenage pregnancy was painful, but it also taught me to value life, family, and my own ability to overcome any adversity. Today, looking back, I know that every tear shed, every moment of fear, and every sleepless night made me stronger. And although my story began with pain, it ended with hope and the certainty that we can overcome any difficulties, no matter how hard the journey may be. The days following the wedding were the hardest of my life. Every morning I woke up with a mixture of fear and hope. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and saw a child and a woman at the same time. The child, frightened by what was to come, and the woman who had to make decisions that would change her life forever. My family was worried, though none of them knew the full extent of what I was going through. Every piece of advice I received was mixed with societal pressure, with the judgments I felt in every glance, in every seemingly innocent word, which for me was a constant reminder that everything had changed too quickly. I remember that the nights were the hardest. While everyone else slept, I cried alone, hugging my belly, talking to my baby, promising him that I would do everything I could to take care of him. I felt guilty for being so young, for not having had a normal childhood. But I also understood that this baby would give me a reason to keep going, a reason to face everything with courage. As I faced everyday life, I discovered the strength of resilience. Every step forward was an act of courage. Going to school, taking care of my responsibilities at home, learning to manage the physical discomfort of pregnancy and the emotional anxiety. I learned to ask for help when I needed it and to trust the few people who were truly there for me. The judgment from society was constant: comments, looks, and whispers that hurt me deeply. But over time, I understood that I couldn't live trapped by what others thought, that my story shouldn't be defined by criticism, but by my ability to move forward, to create a future for myself and my child. There were moments of great sadness, moments when I wished I could turn back time, when I felt that everything was unfair. But there were also moments of unexpected joy, feeling the baby move, hearing his heartbeat for the first time on the ultrasound, receiving words of love and support from people who reminded me that I wasn't alone. I learned to transform fear into strength. Every pain, every sleepless night, and every tear shed became a life lesson. I learned to appreciate motherhood and the responsibility it entails, even in circumstances I didn't choose. I discovered the importance of self-acceptance and believing in my ability to overcome any obstacle. As my pregnancy progressed, my body changed, and so did my mind. The physical challenges were significant, but nothing compared to the emotional ones. I felt a constant mix of anxiety and love. I learned to breathe, to find calm amidst the storm, and to focus on the future. I was building a future full of possibilities, despite the pain of the past. The day I finally gave birth was a transformative moment. All the suffering, all the tears, all the fears merged into an instant of pure emotion. Holding my son for the first time, I understood that life always finds a way to teach us to be strong, that even in the darkest moments, there is always a light guiding the way. Motherhood taught me to be courageous, to fight for my dreams, and never to give up. It made me realize that the past doesn't define our future, but rather our ability to learn and move forward is what truly matters. And although my story began with extreme difficulties, it ended with hope, resilience, and unconditional love. In the months following my wedding, my life became an emotional roller coaster. Every day brought a new challenge, and sometimes it seemed I couldn't go on. Mornings started with a knot in my stomach and a mix of fear and responsibility that stayed with me all day. I would look at my belly and remember that I wasn't alone. There was a little life growing inside me, completely dependent on me, and that gave me strength. My days at school were particularly difficult. Some classmates started noticing that I couldn't run or play like before, and rumors began to circulate. I felt like everyone was looking at me differently, some with pity, others with judgment. Learning to ignore their comments was a slow and painful process. Every word, every glance, reminded me that my life had changed drastically, and that I now had to shoulder responsibilities no teenager should face so early. At home, the situation wasn't easy either. My parents, though loving, didn't always understand the depth of my emotions. There were times when I felt alone, even surrounded by family. Sometimes, while everyone slept, I would get up and walk around the house, cradling my belly, talking to my baby, trying to explain that everything would be okay, even though I wasn't sure myself. Doctor's appointments were another challenge. Learning about prenatal care, hearing the baby's heartbeat for the first time, and seeing the ultrasound images filled me with both fear and wonder. Each appointment was a reminder that I had to stay strong, that my responsibility went beyond myself. Every word the doctors said about nutrition, growth, and the baby's health made me aware of how delicate the situation was and the need to do everything right. The fear of facing the outside world was constant. Going out meant dealing with curious stares and sometimes cruel comments. But I also discovered small rays of light, close friends who supported me, teachers who encouraged me, and strangers who, without knowing my whole story, offered words of encouragement. I learned to cling to those small sources of support because they were the ones that reminded me that there was still goodness in the world. My relationship with my future husband also changed. What had started as a celebration transformed into a bond filled with uncertainty. There were days when I felt alone, even when he was right beside me. The responsibility of the pregnancy pushed us both to mature quickly. We learned to communicate differently, to support each other, and to face the challenges that arose together. That experience united us in a way I never imagined, teaching us the importance of patience, understanding, and love in difficult circumstances. Preparing for the baby's arrival brought a mix of joy and anxiety. Buying clothes, setting up the nursery, and choosing every detail was exciting. But it also reminded me of the immense responsibility I was about to take on. Every time I held a tiny sweater in my hands, I imagined what life would be like with him in my arms, how everything would change forever, and how I had to be prepared for any obstacle. Pregnancy also brought physical changes that were difficult to accept. Fatigue, nausea, back pain, and hormonal fluctuations affected my emotional state. There were days when I cried for no apparent reason, days when I felt disconnected from everything. However, I learned to listen to my body, to be patient with myself, and to understand that every pain and every change was part of the process of bringing a new life into the world. During that time, I started keeping a journal. Every night, after everyone had gone to bed, I poured my emotions onto paper. My fears, my hopes, my dreams, and my doubts. This act became my therapy, a way to vent and stay connected to my deepest feelings. With each page written, I felt stronger, more capable of facing life, and more aware that my story shouldn't be defined by the pain, but by the strength with which I faced it. Family gatherings were complicated. Every comment, every piece of advice, however well-intentioned, reminded me of the fragility of my situation. There were moments of tension, arguments, and awkward silences. I learned to stay calm, to listen without reacting impulsively, and to make decisions based on what was best for myself and my child. This skill became an invaluable lesson that would stay with me throughout my life. The ability to face conflicts with serenity and determination. As the due date approached, my anxiety intensified. Every false contraction, every baby movement, every sign that birth was near filled me with fear and anticipation. Yet, I also felt an indescribable joy. I would soon have my child in my arms, and all the suffering and tears of the past months would have profound meaning. The last few days before the birth were a whirlwind of emotions. Anticipation, worry, and love mingled in a kaleidoscope of feelings beyond my control. My closest friends visited, offered words of encouragement, helped with preparations, and reminded me that I wasn't alone on this journey. This support network became a fundamental pillar, teaching me the importance of surrounding myself with people who truly care. The day of my child's birth was the most transformative moment of my life. All the pain, all the tears, all the uncertainty merged into an instant of pure emotion and gratitude. When I held my child for the first time, I understood that life always finds a way to teach us powerful lessons. That even in adversity, there is always love. That even in loneliness, there is always hope. That even in sadness, there are always reasons to smile. My experience as a teenage mother taught me more than any book or school could have. I learned to be strong, to trust myself, and to face any obstacle with courage. I discovered the importance of resilience, self-love, and commitment to those who depend on us. And although my story began with suffering, it ended with hope, growth, and a love that transcends any difficulty. After giving birth, life didn't become easier, but it did become more meaningful. Every day was filled with new responsibilities: feeding the baby, changing diapers, managing his sleep schedule, and making sure he received everything he needed to grow up healthy. I learned to manage my time efficiently, to prioritize what was important, and to accept that I couldn't control everything. Sometimes I felt physically and emotionally exhausted, but my son's smile was enough to give me strength and keep me going. The first few months were a challenge. The nights were long and quiet, but full of new sounds. The baby's cries, his shy giggles, and the little movements that announced each new discovery. I learned to interpret his signals, to understand what he needed without words, and to anticipate his needs. That connection, though intense and exhausting, made me feel an indescribable closeness to my son, a bond that no obstacle could break. My relationship with my family also changed. My mother, seeing my dedication and love for my son, began to trust me more. Although there were doubts and fears at first, over time she gave me her full support, helping me every step of the way. My siblings also learned to be patient and loving, understanding that we were all in a new situation that required unity and understanding. This family network became a fundamental pillar that allowed me to never feel alone in the face of daily challenges. The outside world, however, continued to present challenges. Society judged a young mother, sometimes with comments full of criticism and disdain. At school and in the community, I heard rumors that tried to discourage me, reminding me that I had started my life as a mother too early. But I learned to filter those words, to listen only to what helped me grow, and to stay focused on what truly mattered: my son's health and happiness. With each step I took, I understood more and more the importance of being resilient. Moments of doubt and sadness were inevitable, but they became opportunities to prove to myself that I could overcome any situation. I discovered that strength isn't always visible. Sometimes it lies in patience, in the ability to care and love without expecting anything in return, and in the will to keep going even when it seems impossible. I also learned to seek professional help. Visits with psychologists and counselors helped me process the complex emotions arising from the trauma I had experienced. I learned to forgive myself for feeling fear, sadness, or anger, and to accept that my experience didn't define me, but rather was part of my journey towards strength. These sessions became a safe space where I could express everything I felt without judgment and receive guidance to face daily challenges with serenity and clarity. As my son grew, each small milestone brought new joys and challenges. His first words, his first steps, every smile and every achievement reminded me that all the initial suffering had been worthwhile. I began to realize that, although life isn't always fair, every effort and every tear contributes to shaping the person we become. My son became my constant motivation, my reason to face my fears and move forward, regardless of the circumstances. My story began with abuse and unimaginable pain, but it taught me the importance of resilience and hope. I learned to transform suffering into strength, to build a future for myself and my son, and to cherish every small moment of happiness that life offers. Every day became an opportunity to grow, to love, and to teach my son that, although the world can be difficult, it is always possible to find light even in the darkest moments. Motherhood also taught me to set boundaries. I learned to identify those who truly wanted to help me from those who only offered judgment or negativity. This allowed me to surround myself with a safe and loving environment where I could raise my son without constantly feeling threatened by external opinions. I understood that protecting our mental and emotional well-being is as important as any other physical care I can provide as a mother. Every night, as I rocked my son to sleep, I reflected on everything we had been through together. I thought about how life had led me down unexpected paths, how pain had been a harsh but necessary teacher, and how my love for my son had become the driving force of my existence. These reflections helped me stay focused and remember that, despite everything, I was building a future full of possibilities and hope. Over the years, I began to share my story with other young women facing similar situations. Through talks, community meetings, and support groups, I showed them that they are not alone, that there are always ways to move forward, and that even in the most difficult times, it is possible to find strength and resilience. My experience became a message of empowerment, an example that, although life can be unfair, there are always paths to overcome adversity and build a future full of love and opportunities. As the months passed, the daily routine became a constant challenge, but also a space for me to discover my own strength. Every day was filled with small triumphs. My son learning to sit up on his own, grasping his toys, babbling his first words. Each milestone, however small, was a reminder that, despite the initial trauma, we were building a new life full of hope and possibilities. Learning to balance my emotions was crucial. There were days when physical and emotional exhaustion would leave me weeping silently while rocking my son. But over time, I realized that those tears weren't a sign of weakness, but a way to release pent-up tension and reconnect with myself. I started keeping a journal, writing down my deepest thoughts and feelings, which helped me organize my thoughts, process my pain, and plan concrete steps to improve our lives. My relationship with my family slowly strengthened. My mother, witnessing my tireless dedication, became my closest ally. She taught me that I wasn't alone, that I could rely on her experience and love to raise my son in a safe environment. My siblings also began to show genuine interest in my son's well-being, helping me create moments of joy and security, demonstrating that, even though our family had faced difficulties, together we could overcome any adversity. Learning was a constant process. From preparing nutritious meals to establishing sleep routines, every decision felt vital. I learned to recognize signs of illness, maintain good hygiene, and foster my son's cognitive development through educational games. This responsibility was overwhelming at times, but also deeply rewarding, because every smile and gesture of affection reminded me that all the effort was worthwhile. As my son grew, so did my concerns. I knew that, given my own background, I had to instill strong values in him from the start: respect, empathy, resilience, and strength. I started reading him stories that reinforced these lessons and created opportunities for open communication where he could express his emotions without fear. Motherhood became a constant learning experience, where every mistake was a lesson, and every success a victory that brought us closer together. The initial trauma I had suffered didn't disappear, but I learned to manage it. Psychological therapy was key to understanding my emotions and teaching my son to identify his own. I discovered that talking about the past, without reliving the pain, empowered me. I learned to transform anguish into motivation, fear into courage, and sadness into unconditional love for my son. This healing process wasn't linear. There were setbacks, moments of despair, days when sadness seemed to engulf everything. However, every time I managed to overcome one of those emotional waves, I felt our family grow stronger. Over time, my son began to interact with other children in play and educational settings. This opened a window to new experiences and opportunities, not only for him, but also for me. I met other young mothers facing similar challenges, and we created a mutual support network. We shared advice, experiences, and words of encouragement, building a community that made me feel less alone and more capable of facing the daily obstacles. The following years were full of constant learning. Each stage of my son's development brought new challenges. His first complete sentences, his first day of school, his adaptation to new environments and people. Every milestone was celebrated with joy and pride, and every mistake was seen as a learning opportunity. I discovered that patience was a fundamental tool, and that unconditional love isn't just a feeling, but a daily practice built through concrete actions. Motherhood also taught me about the importance of self-compassion. I learned to take care of myself physically and emotionally, because I knew that to best care for my son, I needed to be strong, balanced, and healthy. I incorporated exercise, healthy eating, and rest into my daily routine. I discovered that even small acts of self-care could make a big difference in my well-being and the quality of parenting I offered my son. Amidst the daily challenges, I also found moments of pure joy. Seeing my son laugh for the first time, hearing him pronounce new words, watching him explore the world with curiosity and innocence, all of these became constant reminders of the beauty of life. I learned to cherish the small moments, to find gratitude in the simple things, and to recognize that, despite everything, we were building a life full of meaning. As the years passed, my son began to understand more about his mother's story. Through age-appropriate conversations, I taught him about resilience, perseverance, and strength. I wanted him to understand that, even though life can be unfair, it's always possible to rise above adversity, learn from it, and move forward. This lesson became a legacy I hoped he would carry with him throughout his life. I also decided to become involved in the community to help other young women facing similar situations. I participated in educational workshops, support groups, and community activities where I could share my experience and offer guidance. I discovered that helping others not only empowered those who received support, but also strengthened me, as each shared story was a reminder of how far I had come and the strength I had developed along the way. Every day was a balancing act between caring for my son, managing my emotions, and building a secure future. I learned to celebrate every small victory, not to minimize my accomplishments, and to recognize that becoming a mother at a young age hadn't defined me, but rather had taught me to be resilient, empathetic, and strong. The challenges I faced shaped me, but they didn't defeat me. They transformed me into a conscious, loving mother, determined to give my child the best possible life. As my son grew, so did I. Motherhood forced me to confront my own fears and traumas in ways I never imagined. Every time I saw him explore the world with curiosity, it reminded me that I too could rebuild my life and find my own path to healing. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the crying went on and on, when the physical and emotional exhaustion made me question whether I was truly ready for all this. Yet, each day I discovered a strength I didn't know I possessed. I learned to recognize my limits and to ask for help when I needed it. Family, friends, and mental health professionals became essential pillars of support. I discovered that being a mother didn't mean doing everything alone, but rather building a support system that allowed both my son and me to thrive. We started attending recreational and educational activities together, where he could socialize and learn, while I learned to trust others and to relinquish some of the control that daily life demanded. The initial trauma remained, but I learned to live with it, without letting it define my life or my son's. Every tear shed, every moment of despair, became an opportunity for growth. Psychotherapy taught me techniques for managing anxiety, reconnecting with my emotions, and communicating effectively with my son. I learned to listen to my own feelings, validate them, and give them a safe space, which allowed me to teach my son to do the same. Continuous learning was one of the most challenging and rewarding aspects of this experience. From infant nutrition to early language stimulation, every detail mattered. I researched positive parenting techniques, games that fostered creativity and empathy, and activities that strengthened the mother-child bond. All of this not only contributed to his development, but also strengthened our relationship, creating a foundation of trust and unconditional love that would be essential for facing any future challenges. Subscribe if you liked the video. As the years passed, my son began to understand, in a general way, his mother's story. We didn't go into the painful details, but we did teach him about resilience, strength, and the importance of facing life with honesty and courage. He learned that, even though life can be unfair, it's always possible to get back up, learn, and move forward. This lesson became a legacy I hoped he would carry with him throughout his life, a constant reminder that, even in the midst of adversity, there is always the possibility of finding light and hope. The experiences I shared with other young mothers also made a profound difference in my life. Every story I heard made me feel less alone and more empowered to face my own challenges. Through these connections, I understood that our collective strength could transform lives, and that sharing our knowledge and support not only helped others, but also strengthened our own healing journey. The community became a safe space where we could talk freely, cry together, and celebrate achievements, no matter how small. Time also taught me to value routine and stability. Establishing schedules, preparing nutritious meals, and creating spaces for learning and play became essential. Every small victory, like getting my son to eat vegetables, learning a new word, or completing a puzzle, became a reminder that we were moving forward, building a life full of purpose and meaning. Despite the initial hardships, I learned to celebrate the everyday moments of happiness. Those simple moments we often overlook. His laughter while playing, spontaneous hugs, his first complete sentences. Every gesture, every expression of joy became a beacon that illuminated even the darkest days. I discovered that, while I couldn't change the past, I could create a present and future full of love, care, and opportunities. As my son grew, so did my confidence and self-assurance as a mother. Every challenge overcome, every difficult decision made, and every moment of resilience reminded me that I was doing the right thing. Motherhood turned into a journey of self-discovery, where I learned to balance love, discipline, and understanding. I realized that I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to be consistent, present, and loving, and that was enough to build a strong foundation for my child. In addition, I started getting involved in volunteer work and community support activities. Sharing my experience with other young women facing similar situations allowed me to find a broader purpose beyond my personal life. I discovered that by helping others, I also strengthened my own resilience and found a deeper meaning in every challenge I overcame. Every shared story, every piece of advice given, every offered hug became a reminder of the power of community and the ability to transform pain into hope. As my son entered childhood, the challenges changed, but they never disappeared. It was no longer just about learning to care for a baby, but about guiding a child who began to ask difficult questions about the world, about justice, and about why some things were so painful. I faced questions about life, morality, and the meaning of our experiences, and every answer I gave had to be honest but careful, tailored to his age. I learned that honesty doesn't mean sharing everything, but offering the truth he could understand and process, teaching him to distinguish between right and wrong without filling him with fear. The nights remained difficult. Sometimes insomnia consumed me, reminding me of the traumatic experiences of my past. However, each sunrise brought new opportunities. Every day my son learned something new, took another step in his development, or shared a spontaneous hug, reinforced my belief that it was worth fighting for. I found strength in routine, in the daily structure we established to maintain a stable and safe environment. Consistency became our ally. Study schedules, educational games, quality time together, and rest periods that allowed us to recharge and regain mental clarity. I discovered the importance of cultivating emotional resilience in my son from an early age. I couldn't protect him from all the pain in the world, but I could teach him to face adversity with courage and determination. Every challenge we overcame together became a tangible example that, even when life is unfair, it is possible to get up and move forward. He learned that strength doesn't mean the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite fear. In parallel, I too grew and healed. Therapy continued to be a fundamental pillar in my life. I not only learned to manage my emotions, but I also developed tools to teach my son about empathy, effective communication, and conflict resolution. We began practicing breathing exercises, meditation, and art activities, which allowed us to channel our emotions in a healthy way. This strengthened our bond and taught us that, even though the past may leave scars, there are always ways to transform them into lessons learned and sources of strength. Our social environment also changed. I learned to build strong friendships and support networks, recognizing that I couldn't do everything alone. Other parents, neighbors, and professionals became invaluable allies. These connections not only offered practical help, but also provided examples of resilience and cooperation that reinforced the lessons I wanted to teach my child. Participating in community activities and support programs became a natural extension of our home, allowing us to grow together and contribute to the well-being of other children and families. Education became a top priority. From learning to read and write to understanding more complex concepts in science and math, every new piece of knowledge was celebrated as a shared achievement. I made sure that each day of learning was accompanied by conversation, reflection, and moments of joy. I discovered that teaching wasn't just about imparting information, but about fostering curiosity, critical thinking, and a love of learning. Every question my child asked was an opportunity to dialogue, explore, and learn together, strengthening our bond and stimulating his intellectual and emotional development. Over time, we faced new challenges related to adolescence. Rebellion, the search for identity, and peer influence were factors that demanded constant attention. I learned to listen more and judge less, to offer guidance without imposing absolute control, and to set clear boundaries that fostered safety and respect. Every difficult conversation was an opportunity to teach him responsibility, self-care, and decision-making. I understood that my role wasn't to eliminate all risks, but to equip him with the tools to navigate the world safely and consciously. Furthermore, our relationship deepened through shared experiences beyond the home. Trips, outdoor activities, creative projects, and small daily rituals helped us create positive memories that balanced the difficult times. Every smile, every achievement, every discovery became a tangible reminder of our ability to overcome adversity and build happiness despite the initial difficulties. As my child grew, I also learned to reflect on my own healing process. I understood that forgiveness, though difficult, was essential. It wasn't about justifying the harm suffered, but about freeing myself from the emotional burden that hindered my growth. I learned to reconcile myself with my past, accept my emotions, and move forward with determination toward a more fulfilling future. This lesson in resilience and self-care not only strengthened me, but also became a model of life for my son. Each challenge we overcame brought us closer together, reinforcing the belief that adversity can become an opportunity for learning, growth, and family bonding. Motherhood taught me that love is not only about protection, but also about guidance, trust, and constant teaching. I learned that raising a child in difficult circumstances requires courage, patience, and creativity, and that every step, however small it may seem, contributes to building a life full of purpose, security, and hope. Over the years, my son began to show more independence and self-confidence, and the results of our daily efforts were evident. What started as a life marked by pain and confusion transformed into a space of learning, love, and resilience. His character grew stronger every day, and as a mother, I could be proud of every small achievement, from his first successful school project to his responsible decisions during adolescence. Each step towards autonomy reinforced the trust we had cultivated over the years and demonstrated to me that our bond was strong and enduring. As my son approached adolescence, we faced the challenges typical of this stage: emotional changes, the search for identity, and peer pressure. It wasn't easy. There were moments of arguments, disagreements, and tears. But I learned to listen actively, to validate his emotions, and to offer guidance without imposing my will. Together, we discovered that mutual respect and open communication were more powerful tools than any punishment. Every resolved conflict strengthened our relationship and taught me that patience and empathy are indispensable pillars of parenting. During these years, I also realized that personal healing is a continuous process. The painful memories were still there, but they no longer dominated my life. I learned to transform anger and sadness into motivation and positive action. I joined support groups, attended resilience workshops, and participated in volunteer activities, sharing my story to help other women facing similar circumstances. Every shared story, every act of support, reinforced the sense of community and allowed me to see that my pain could become a force for positive change in the lives of others. This time also allowed me to reconnect with my extended family and create a broader, more supportive environment for my son. Grandparents, aunts and uncles, close friends, teachers and neighbors became valuable allies. This network not only provided practical support, but also offered examples of love, strength, and resilience that complemented the lessons I taught at home. Every interaction, every piece of advice, and every hug contributed to building a foundation of emotional security that strengthened our home and our mutual trust. Education was always a central pillar. From a young age, I made sure my son understood the importance of learning, not only from books, but from life itself. Every question he asked became a rich conversation about justice, ethics, empathy, and responsibility. I discovered that teaching wasn't just about imparting knowledge, but about fostering curiosity, critical thinking, and the ability to face challenges with intelligence and courage. As time went on, we also began to enjoy moments of shared joy that balanced the shadows of the past. Trips, games, creative projects, and small daily rituals became unforgettable memories. Every smile, every achievement, every hug strengthened our bond and reminded us that, although life had started painfully, it was possible to build happiness and hope. As my son approached adulthood, he became a thoughtful, compassionate, and strong young man. We had built together a solid foundation of values, resilience, and love. It was no longer solely my responsibility to protect him. I could now trust that he could make wise decisions, take care of himself, and help others. This transfer of trust was one of the most rewarding moments of my life. Finally, I understood that true victory wasn't about erasing the past, but about transforming pain into lessons, love, and strength. Every tear, every fear, and every difficulty had forged an unbreakable bond between my son and me. I learned that resilience isn't measured by the absence of pain, but by the ability to move forward, to love, to teach, and to build a better future. Our story, though initially marked by suffering, has become a testament to hope. It teaches us that even in the darkest circumstances, it is possible to find light, that love and dedication can transform lives, and that every challenge overcome strengthens the soul. Today, when I look at my son, I see not only the person he has grown into, but also a reflection of our shared strength, of every sacrifice we made, and every lesson we learned. Our story serves as a reminder that while we cannot change the past, we can build a future filled with love, learning, and resilience. As the years passed, the memories of that painful day remained in my mind, but they no longer tormented me. I had transformed them into strength. I learned to recognize my emotions, not to repress them, and to channel them into care and attention for my son. Every time I saw him laugh, learn something new, or simply enjoy a simple moment, I felt the weight of sadness lift. I understood that, although my life had begun with a deep wound, it could still be a safe and loving place for someone else. I remember those days when anxiety overwhelmed me, when I didn't know how to face my son's gaze as I struggled with my own fears. It wasn't easy to explain to him that life could be unfair, that sometimes adults made serious mistakes, and that, although the past was painful, we could choose how to live in the present. It was a learning process for both of us. I learned to express my emotions in a healthy way, and he learned to feel, to understand, and to develop empathy from a very young age. During his early years, we established routines that gave us structure and security. Every morning began with breakfast together, where we talked about what we expected from the day and shared little thoughts. School became a place of growth, but also a challenge, dealing with curious classmates, uncomfortable questions, and the need to protect him from any comment that could hurt him. I learned to be his advocate, his guide, and his refuge, and that brought us closer than I ever imagined. As he grew older, I faced the difficult task of explaining to him that some people in the world could cause harm, and that although I had suffered, he could learn to trust, to love, and to be strong. It was a constant balancing act between warning him and not scaring him, between teaching him and allowing him to discover for himself the limits and possibilities of life. Every conversation about respect, responsibility, and justice was another step towards building his character and his ability to make the right decisions. At the same time, I became actively involved in my community. I participated in support groups for women who had been through similar situations, gave talks on resilience, and shared my story with those who needed to hear that they weren't alone. This work not only helped others, but also strengthened me. I realized that my pain could be transformed into a force for positive change, and that every woman who found hope through my story was another victory. Over time, we began to build moments of genuine joy. On weekends, we would plan little outings, visits to parks, museums, and cultural events. I learned to celebrate every achievement, every smile, every expression of affection. Together, we discovered the beauty of everyday life. Baking a cake, watching a movie at home, or simply walking down the street while sharing stories. Each moment became an unforgettable memory that helped us move forward, though never forget the difficult times. During his adolescence, life presented us with new challenges: hormonal changes, the search for identity, difficult friendships, and social pressures. There were moments of tension, arguments, and tears, but we learned to communicate without shouting, to listen without judging, and to guide without imposing. I was amazed by his ability to learn from mistakes, to reflect, and to show compassion. Each small triumph during this stage reinforced the trust we had built over the years, and demonstrated that resilience is both taught and learned. I also made sure he understood the importance of education and knowledge. Every question became an opportunity for learning. Every curiosity was addressed with patience and clarity. I taught him not only math, literature, or history, but also essential values: respect, empathy, responsibility, and the ability to make informed decisions. He learned to discern right from wrong, to value honesty, and to understand the consequences of his actions. In adolescence, we also faced new fears: dangerous friendships, external influences, and exposure to media that could confuse or mislead him. It was a constant challenge to teach him to filter information, to think critically, and to trust his own judgment. Every conversation, every piece of advice, every shared story strengthened his ability to resist external pressures and maintain his integrity. As he approached adulthood, we began to experience a subtle but profound change. I was no longer just his protective mother, but also a friend and confidant. We shared our concerns, dreams, and aspirations. I learned to trust his decisions, to respect his space, and to celebrate his independence. This transfer of responsibility and trust was one of the most rewarding moments of my life. Finally, I understood that our story wasn't just about pain and suffering, but also about transformation, resilience, and love. I learned that true strength doesn't lie in the absence of difficulties, but in the ability to face them, learn from them, and grow. Every tear, every fear, every sleepless night of uncertainty had served to forge an unbreakable bond between my son and me. Today, I look back and see everything we have overcome, from the darkest days to the moments of light and joy. I see a strong, compassionate, and hopeful young man, and I am proud of the woman I have become. Our story is a testament to the fact that, even in the most difficult circumstances, love and dedication can transform lives, teach resilience, and pave the way to a brighter future. I remember how each morning was a small challenge, but also an opportunity. When I woke up, I would pause for a moment to breathe and prepare myself emotionally for the day. Every smile my son gave me when he opened his eyes was a reminder that our struggle had meaning. Although the past had left its mark on me, I understood that each sunrise was a blank page, an opportunity to write moments of hope and joy. During pregnancy, every change in my body was a constant reminder of what had happened, but also of the life growing inside me. Uncertainty and fear mingled with the anticipation of meeting this being who depended entirely on me. I walked around the house carefully, avoiding loud noises or situations that could upset me, while talking to him, singing soft lullabies, telling him stories, and promising him that, no matter what had happened, he would always have a home filled with love. The ultrasound appointments were both frightening and awe-inspiring. Every movement I felt reminded me of the fragility of our situation and, at the same time, the strength I could find within myself. Looking at the image on the screen, seeing his little heart beating, hearing the rhythmic sound that confirmed he was alive and healthy, gave me a surge of hope that no one could take away. I kept telling myself that, although the world could sometimes be cruel, I could protect him and give him everything he needed to grow up with dignity and love. When the time for childbirth arrived, nerves and excitement mingled intensely. I was surrounded by doctors, nurses, and trusted family members, but the feeling of responsibility was overwhelming. Every breath was a conscious effort, every contraction a test of strength and endurance. Finally, when I held him in my arms for the first time, I felt a mixture of relief, love, and indescribable joy. That little being, conceived in painful circumstances, was now my reason for living, my driving force to move forward and rebuild our story. As the months passed, everyday life brought new challenges. I learned to balance work, self-care, and parenting. There were sleepless nights, constant worries, and moments of frustration. But I also discovered the patience and creativity needed to overcome obstacles. We established routines that gave us structure. Mornings started with nutritious breakfasts and conversations about our dreams and plans for the day. Afternoons were for play, learning, and exploration. And evenings were for stories, songs, and hugs that strengthened our bond. Every interaction with other people was an exercise in prudence and discernment. I knew I had to protect our privacy while, at the same time, create a safe and positive social environment. I couldn't allow intrusive stares, inappropriate questions, or rumors to disrupt our world. I learned to assess each situation, to trust my instincts, and to teach my son to recognize warning signs, fostering his sense of self-protection from a very young age. During his childhood, even the smallest achievements were celebrated as victories. Learning to walk, saying his first words, discovering colors and shapes every detail was a source of pride. Through these experiences, we both learned that resilience is built with patience, perseverance, and love. Every smile, every step, every hug strengthened our bond and reminded us that, although the past had been painful, the present could be full of joy and possibilities. As he grew older, we also faced challenging moments. Discussions about boundaries, school decisions, or difficult friendships tested our communication and mutual understanding. I learned to listen actively, to validate his emotions, and to guide him without imposing, allowing him to develop autonomy and self-confidence. Each conflict became an opportunity for learning and growth for both of us, teaching us to manage intense emotions, frustrations, and challenges in a healthy way. During adolescence, the challenges intensified. Physical, hormonal, and emotional changes required patience and constant adaptation. First crushes, conflicts with friends, and social pressures caused anxiety, but they were also teaching moments. We talked for hours about decisions, consequences, and values. We discussed respect, self-esteem, and the importance of making conscious choices. I learned to balance guidance with freedom, ensuring he understood the risks without stifling his ability to experience life. At the same time, I became more involved in my community. I shared my story with young women, support groups, and organizations fighting against violence, abuse, and inequality. Actively participating gave me strength and purpose, and taught me that my pain could be transformed into a tool for positive change. Every shared story, every attentive ear, every piece of advice offered contributed to building a network of solidarity and hope. As time went on, my relationship with my son transformed. From being dependent and needing protection, he began to show leadership, initiative, and decision-making skills. We talked about his future, his dreams, and his fears. I learned to give him space, to trust him, and to celebrate his independence. Every academic achievement, every meaningful friendship, every positive experience served as a reminder that our hard work and resilience had paid off. The love we shared became a safe haven from painful memories. Every hug, every word of encouragement, and every everyday gesture strengthened our confidence and our ability to face the world. I came to understand that true strength isn't about avoiding suffering, but rather about facing life with dignity, learning from difficulties, and finding moments of happiness even amidst adversity. Looking back today, I see not only the scars, but also the moments of beauty and learning. I see a young man full of hope and the capacity to love, and a woman who, despite the pain, has found meaning, purpose, and strength. Our story demonstrates that even in the darkest circumstances, it is possible to transform suffering into resilience, fear into love, and tragedy into a lesson learned. Every day is a new chapter. Every sunrise brings opportunities to continue building memories, passing on values, and strengthening bonds. I have learned that life is not measured by the difficulties we face, but by our ability to rise above them, to love, and to create a better future.